Hello and welcome to today's webinar, How to Use Your Data to Drive Sales Leads and Conversions. I'm Charlotte Morgan, Marketing Programs Manager at Telium, and your hosts for today are Danny Mosch, Digital Strategist for Telium, and Corbinian Span, Data Management Industry Expert. Before we get started, I'd like to go over some housekeeping items. Firstly, the webinar will last approximately an hour, including Q&A. The slides will be available to everyone who attended, along with some additional resources after the webinar. Please feel free to submit a question at any time. We'd love to hear them, and we'll be answering them towards the end of the webinar. Any we aren't able to answer during the webinar, we'll follow up with you directly afterwards. So without further ado, let's have a look at our key points for today's webinar. So today's webinar will be covering the relationship between data and revenue, how data sources can be used and the insights garnered, what the common problems are and how to solve them, the role of data across your sales cycle, and 5 steps to driving sales leads and conversions from your data. So I'm going to hand over now to your first presenter, Danny Mosch.
Thanks, Charlotte. Hi, everyone. This is Danny speaking. And let's start right away with, with the first slide. Yes, I think as we all know, data has a huge role within every organization in every industry nowadays. In fact, as our CEO likes to call it, data is the new oil. And I think when we talk about data and its impact on businesses, the role has massively increased over time. And I think every one of us heard of the 3 buzzwords: automation, personalization, and prediction. And all of these aspects can play huge roles to add value to the various businesses. So for example, for automation, you can use this for your programmatic advertising efforts, for the first-party data that you're collecting on the websites from your users. You can use them for personalizing and offering the best user experience for them. And when it comes to machine learning and artificial intelligence, you can use the data and have it enriched and used by your machine learning system in order to predict and see what future users could be interested in order to drive more and more conversions and leads over time. So you see there is plenty of scenarios for using data across the industries and across various sections of your business, but the question is always on how to make the most of it. And this will now lead to the first part of Corbinian, and therefore I would like to hand over to him.
Thank you, Danny. A very warm welcome from my side. My name is Corbinian, and I'd like to talk to you in the next 10 to 15 minutes about the role of data. And not only the role of data, but what can we do with analytical insights. So, as you all know, the key question for BI and analytics most of the time is how can we make data actionable? And if you think a little bit, you know that most of the time there is a gap between analytical insights and business objectives. Of course, there should not be a gap and there shouldn't be a versus. But most of the time, BI teams and analytics teams work for themselves and are not quite connected to the business objectives. How we can overcome the situation, I'd like to explain you on the next slides. So, first of all, in my mind, we have to think about organizational change. This is maybe now not really close to what we are talking today, to your mind maybe, because it's about data and performance. But I think if you really want to drive performance via data, it is very, very important that you think about this question: who has the data ownership? What you can see on this slide is what I like to call the data performance roadmap. So first of all, you have data quality. You have to take care for the quality of your data. Second, you have to think about the integration of your data, so what you can do with the data. And number 3, very important, is the expectation management. So for instance, if you are an online retailer and you just have first-party data at hand, so it is very necessary that you have a good expectation management. Number 4 is the relationship with the business in the end. So all 4 points have to go together really well. Otherwise, you will not succeed. And therefore, I think organizational change is necessary because somebody has to take care for the 4 action items: data quality, data integration, expectation management, and also take care for relationship with the business itself. If you go one step further down the road, I dive a little bit into why organizational change is necessary. So first of all, when I'm working together with companies, I see that most of them do have nowadays BI teams. Yes, they do have analytics teams, but some of them lack the definition of goals. Why do they do analytics? Why do they do BI? Now, most of you would say, okay, because they want to support the business. That's true. But how can we, from an analytics perspective, support the business? First of all, we have to define the goals. For instance, sell out or sell in or brand awareness. Anyhow, we have to define the goal. So to clarify the question, why do we do it? Number 2, the agile development with data. In many organizations, I see that data and the handling of data is done inside a team, so like analytics and BI, but they are not really included and integrated in the IT department, the marketing department, or the sales department. So meaning they have their own development, their own goals. And I think data analytics teams always have to be integrated in the broader organization. So meaning, how do we work with data? And obviously, this varies quite a lot between a big company and smaller companies, a global company or local companies, B2B and B2C. If we clarify this question, we can talk a little bit about data ownership. Who owns the data? Many organization marketing teams own the data. But if you have a sales-centric organization, also the sales team should own the data. And in the end, of course, the business is a data owner as well, if it comes to performance, like sellout. So it is absolutely crucial to clarify who has the data ownership, especially nowadays as we have GDPR on the horizon and maybe e-cookie privacy. Data integration, number 4, is the question on what do we do with the data. So how many different data streams do we integrate in each other? For instance, Adobe, Salesforce, Google Analytics, but also business performance data. So it is very important not to look only at the first-party data, but also on the other data streams and to integrate them. And the last point on this slide, also very important, is data distribution. All of us know that obviously you can share a lot of PDFs and Excel reports in the company, but the question is this really actionable? Does really everybody in the company log into Google Analytics and see what's going on? Most of the time not. So the biggest question, if you want to drive organizational change via data, you have to ask the question how to distribute your data. So put it in a nutshell, how can we derive insight on the one hand side, analytics and BI, and drive change with data on the other hand side? And so far, I think you should have understood that it is not only a technical question and a question that we can solve with infrastructure, but also a question, who do we engage with, how many people do we have in our organization, and how do we drive change via our experts and managers. So the key question is now, what is needed to drive leads and conversions via data? The first step for me is always a data layer. And of course, as you know, Tilium is very famous for its tag management. But what you need in addition to a good tag management like Tilium is, for me, a data layer. And why is it so important? Let me expand a little on this. A data layer is nothing more than a rule-based setup to understand what should happen on a website and what not. So meaning what is an element of conversion and what do we expect our consumers to do on a website. And if it is B2C or B2B, we do have different types of websites. So we do have home pages, category pages, product pages, blogs, maybe we have service pages. And for all of them, we may have different action items, like sign up to a newsletter, click a button, read more, look at the price of something, make a phone call. And all of that we can cover with a data layer. So a data layer is nothing more than a rule set where we think in advance what users should do on a certain landing page. And I think this is pretty helpful to cluster our sites with different categories, but also to define what the expectation is. And this goes right back to the goal setting. What do we expect our consumers to do? And if we have clarified this question, the second slide is, the behavioral targeting and the consumer segments. Obviously, we have to understand who our users are. And here you can see in this slide that there are two major aspects to it. On the left-hand side, we do have the behavioral aspect. On the right-hand side, we do have an organizational aspect. So targeting and consumer aspects for me is not only to be really sharp and transparent on personas, but also to understand the company itself. If you start with the right-hand side of the slide, you see that we have the question for resources, competence, product and service, and processes. This is the context of our company. This is absolutely internal, so meaning what do we offer? The other side, the external side, are consumers and competitors, and this is the usage of segmentation itself, like demographic, psychological, geographic, and here you could count easily more different aspects of behavioral targeting. But I think it is very important to understand that this is not only an external and persona-focused exercise, but also an internal exercise to understand what our resources, competence, products, and services are. And in the end, everything has to fit together. If you look at how the outcome should be, this is a screenshot from Telium, an audience discovery. And if you compare this now to, in my eyes, relatively artificial built personas, this is the way how we can, in our days, build personas, built purely on data, so doing completely data-driven marketing. And obviously, now coming back to step number one, it is very important to have a data layer and an idea of what consumers should do on websites to derive the right data. And of course, to speak to the right consumers, because as many companies, and we do not want to have everybody on our websites, but we just want to have the right target group on our website. Number three, coming from predictive to prescriptive analytics. So many companies nowadays know that analytics is not enough, because analytics basically looks at what happened. So yes, we do have information, who was on our website, for instance, how many people signed up to a newsletter, how many people bought products, but this is not enough. Obviously, we want to see why did it happen, what will happen in the future, meaning how many people will buy or sign up to a newsletter, and how can we make it happen. So the step from what happened to how can we make it happen, so meaning what do we have to do to be successful, is the step towards optimization. And this is not an easy step, obviously. What you can see here now, the key is the interpretation of data. And this is crucial for me, because if you look at the steps from number 1 to number 6, from the definition of data to the prediction of actions, you need people and experts in this cycle. Obviously, as Danny said in the beginning, you can automate a lot nowadays, and you should automate quite a lot, but obviously it is very important that people understand, activate, and decide. This is why you can see it in red in the middle. The unified data and the data activation cross-channel is something that an expert has to do, him or herself, and to drive the necessary change in the organization. So, meaning coming back, this is the organizational change I was talking about. It is not enough to implement a data layer. It is not enough to have a good tech management system, obviously also a protection. If you really want that it works, you really have to have the right experts that work with the data, activate it, and decide on it. So coming back to now a little short summary. First of all, for me, it's a question of design, not technology. Many companies do have a lot of technology nowadays for BI and analytics, not only Google, but as said before, Oracle, Adobe, Salesforce, and so forth. But in the end, if you look at it, the data itself is not the clue, but you really have to have the data story. It has to be shareable, and you need a certain kind of design. So in the middle of this bubble, you have data visualization, and I think that this is the key to it. You really have to make sense out of your data. And this is not done with Excel charts and PDFs, but it is done with a good data visualization. So for sales, marketing, retail, and business, if you really want people to work with the data you offer in the BIs and analytics teams, you have to take care for data visualization. And this is a pretty hard job. It's not easy. For each company and each business type, there is a unique way to visualize the data. There's no one-fits-all solution. And I just can recommend, obviously, the tools everybody knows nowadays, like Domo, Tableau, Power BI. Those are great tools to adapt the visualization to your company goals. Number 2, experts versus management. With this chart, I really want to highlight that data experts are not managers. So meaning, to drive change in your organization, you need to have different types of experts. On the left-hand side, you can imagine that this is a data engineer, and she really has to understand how to work with the data. Obviously, she needs tech skills to make it happen and to control also data quality. And on the right-hand side, maybe you have a manager who really takes the decision, the necessary decision to drive change and to do something with the data. But normally, those are not the same guys. In many companies, I see still that managers and experts are the same person. And I think that this is maybe not a good idea for many companies, because you really want to make sure that, yes, you do have the right infrastructure and somebody takes care for the tech infrastructure. But on the other hand side, you need people to act on data. And this is why I would strictly divide between experts and managers. Number 3 is you have to understand and optimize processes. It's not enough to discover what you can do with the data. You have to define what you want to do. You have to apply it, measure, and monitor it. This is like an agile workflow. Everybody knows it's build, measure, learn. And this is exactly what we want to do if we want to reach out to data governance, meaning that we really are able to do something with the data, coming from the discovery to the definition, application, measurement, and monitoring, and start again. And obviously, again, this is very different in different companies. So to drive informed decisions via data for business, marketing, and sales, you need to improve the data, you need to improve information, increase the knowledge, improve performance, and in the end, improve profitability. So this is much more a circle and an agile workflow like build, measure, learn instead of an ongoing curve. And now I'd like to hand over to Danny again.
Thanks, Corbinian. So yes, coming back to the data quality that Corbinian already touched before, and the various data types, there's a lot to be aware about in order to make the most out of your data afterwards, but I will come to that in a second. First of all, when you think about your users and the information that they leave with you on the website, there are different breadcrumbs along the way, from anonymous user to ultimately a customer on your website, that you can collect and that you need to collect in order to get a unified customer view about across all the different channels that they are using and all the different platforms and devices. So there are multiple IDs depending on what industry you work in or the business operates. Different IDs apply, but this is crucial in order to get, especially with GDPR and e-privacy in the back of our minds, to be able to get a unified view across the user and across the channels. But also mentioning quality assurance, it's important with continuous deployments across your website and your apps and multiple teams that are working on the different products. And also that, from my experience, that tracking, coming back to the data layer that Corbinian mentioned, is not the most important thing that maybe engineers and product managers think about, because for them it should be about the product. But data is getting more and more important. So you need to make sure that not only the product looks great for the customer and it does what it should do, but also that you gain all the necessary data along the way about the customer interaction. Because we all make mistakes along the way, but there are tools such as, for example, Telium's event stream. You can get some information on our website about it. It can really help you to make sure that the data is accurate along the way, because the data that you're collecting then also feeds your machine learning systems, for example, and if they are fueled with bad data, then also the outcome can't be good. Okay. So, and talking about the unified customer view, so collecting the data across the different channels and vendors and platforms allows you to get a comprehensive view of what customers on your website are doing and what behaviors they have. And certain attributes then apply for these users. So is this a mobile converter? What kind of user is this when it comes to lifetime value? What preference do they have? What categories do they like? So all the aspects that also Corbinian touched about earlier on. So in order to get this unified customer view, you have to have your data right. This can be then contributed into attributes and audiences that you want to market to. And these audiences then ultimately can be sent to all the different vendors that you're working with. But it's also crucial when you think about it in a way that when you develop your business, the product managers come up with the idea and then they talk with the marketing people and also the analytics guys about how to do it and how to measure it. This comes back to what Corbinian meant with his organizational change, that this also allows you to have all the teams working together on a best customer experience and on business development to work together and have this orchestrated in one view so that everybody relies on the same data and the same customer view, so that everybody knows, okay, this is this one customer and we want to market to them. Okay, and this brings us to how we actually execute it. So, and I brought some examples with me with an example life cycle. But before I begin, I want to talk in general about use cases, because use cases is what you do in the end. That what I just said is about, okay, coming up with an idea. What is the business need? What do we want to do? How we want to achieve it? And of course, how to measure it. And we at Telium usually recommend to think about 4 aspects when it comes to use cases. So first of all, where do you want to reach your audience? Is it on-site, on your website? Is it within your app? Is it via an email? Is it on a mobile device? Is it on a social channel? Where do you want to reach them? And what data is required? So this comes back to the data layer. So in order to target these users, what information do you need from them in order to select them within all the users on your website or on your app? What do you want from the users to do? What is the desired engagement? Is it a click on an email? Is it something to add to the cart? Is it to come back and finish their abandoned basket? Is it to watch a video? Is it to read a blog post? Whatever it is, you need to be clear about that. And of course, last but not least, in the end, every business is about either making more money, making more revenue, or saving costs. but in order to measure the performance of the individual use cases, it makes sense to come up with KPIs like lifetime values, average order values, or click-through rates to make sure that the individual campaigns are successful for themselves and contribute to the overall business goals. And when you then have, there we go, a lot of use cases on the table, it's also necessary to think about, okay, what's the prioritization along the use cases? And this is also crucial when more and more teams working together and are maybe targeting similar audiences, or when it comes to certain technical dependencies. If you have vendors that you want to integrate with, or you have channels that you want to use, but you do not integrate with a specific vendor yet, or if data needs to be implemented on the website or in the data layer in order to capture the relevant information. And of course, when it comes to the marketing campaigns, do you need new creatives in order to make this campaign useful for the end user? Because it doesn't make sense to have different groups of people and have a segmentation, but then market to them all in the same way with the text and with the same images. So this is also not only work from the data perspective, but also from the marketing perspective. And of course, timeline. Is it an autumn promotion that you will now want to run? So this is probably more important than a Christmas promotion that you're planning. All these kinds of aspects need to be considered when you implement your use cases and when prioritizing them. Okay, and this now leads to a consumer lifecycle that I want to run you through to visualize the different use cases you can do along the life cycle of the user, and this can be applied to any kind of industry. I know it chose the real estate industry, but with every industry, you have different touch points across, and these 5 steps can be applied to almost every business, where you can have your touch points with the users and you can encourage them to convert, if it's a sale or a lead or just a read. Okay. With the real estate industry, it's about, first of all, awareness. I think anybody of us has moved at some point. So first of all, you need to be aware of a website, for example. So we know the big players in Germany, Immowelt, Immobilien Scout, and also if you're tuning in from the UK, Rightmove, for example, you need to be aware of the brand. So a lot of brands have some awareness, but there's also competitors outside, so you need to make sure that users are coming to your site and not to the others. Then there's the property search phase, where you're actively looking for an apartment. Then you visit them, send an application. Then also, before you move, you maybe need additional services around this, maybe a moving company or a mortgage. And then ultimately, if you're not renting, you become a homeowner. And there's also needs when you're a homeowner, when you're renting out, for example. And then maybe at some point, the loop closes and you need to find a new home at some point, and then the cycle starts from the beginning. And I've now, for every cycle step, a sample strategy, what you can do, and this then also can be applied to other businesses. So in the awareness phase, you usually don't know much about your users because they are just looking through maybe different websites and are looking through the content that you're offering. So you can at least see, okay, track the different content that you're offering and content pages, for example, all the different services, the real estate types that the website offers, and of course, metadata about the users. Then, of course, the engagement. This can be measured on every website. So how many articles are viewed? Have they viewed videos about different apartment types? How much time do they spend on the website in general? And where they are coming from. And the goals in this stage can be to at least create remarketable segments. So if users are dropping off, that you can create users for has above average time on site and above average visits per visitor. So this can be easily found also in your web analytics system in order to get a first idea on where to set the thresholds, and then get them to come back to your website and maybe offer them houses or flats depending on what they've looked at, and see, okay, maybe also for different price ranges they've looked at, to come back and engage more with the websites. And on the other hand, also maybe to re-engage house owners and offer the services or the paperwork that they maybe can download on the website when they are renting out an apartment. And collecting this data and understanding the sources where they are coming from is really the goal for this first awareness stage. So when a user is then more and more interested in really searching for a property and coming back to your website more and more, it's about retention of your website, so they keep them away from competitors and closer and loyal to your website, and also beginning to monetize them. Because usually when someone is just looking for an apartment, they send an inquiry to a home, but this is not creating any value. Of course, the realtors and the homeowners, they have to pay a fee to get listed, but the majority of users on a website, they are just looking through information and looking for houses and sending contact requests. So they're not spending actively money on the website. So for example, with on-site personalization, you could ask when someone is looking for a property to say, okay, we have a shortlist product. We have something you can save your search with all the necessary details that you want to have in your house or in your flat. And also when you're searching for multiple devices, what a lot of people do, to log in, which is also important in order to get this unified customer view. And the benefit for the user is to have it synchronized and only need to set up it once. So yes, the goal is to encourage the users to register, collect more data along the journey. And of course, if you have just users that are just looking through, because some users just look for apartments and are not really interested to buy something unless there is a bargain maybe. You can also suppress them, because also a lot of users that do not work in digital marketing as we do not even know the difference between SEA and SEO and just click the first link whenever they type something in Google. So at least you can save some money there. Okay, and then now it becomes more and more important. When someone wants to visit and apply for an apartment, you can offer them services to say, okay, if you're visiting more than one apartment, it makes sense to make notes as visit dates in order to keep track on where you want to go, and all these information, keep them closer to your business. And the chance that you offer communication services so that you keep the communication and all the details on your website, and don't let them maybe do it outside and via email. Keep them more closer to your business, and you understand better when it's maybe necessary that you offer additional services. But I'll come to that in a second. Yes, and sometimes when you maybe move to cities like Berlin or Hamburg, it can be tough to find an apartment. So there are also patterns where people maybe get frustrated. So you see patterns within the visit frequency on your website, and you can then get back to them and encourage them to come back and have another look, so they don't get too frustrated and maybe look somewhere else in order to find a real apartment. But at this stage, it's really important to have a tight relationship to the visit, to the user after the visit, because a lot of users just know portals like Immobilien Scout and Immowelt for searching for a property, but they don't know that they also offer additional services like moving and mortgages. And these are the systems or the services that are easily monetizable, because these are lead-based systems. And this is where we're coming to next. So the services itself, this adds to the customer experience, and so they have everything in one place, in one website. You can offer all these services, but you can leverage the data that you collect from the users for example, when someone is searching for a mortgage, then they usually have to type in their own capital in order to calculate what the interest rate will be and everything. So this is just a no-brainer that they type in this kind of data. But this information about their own capital is also relevant to third parties. For example, if they type in that they have 50,000 euro or pounds or whatever in own capital, so this could be relevant to maybe Mercedes-Benz or BMW, that they know, okay, this is a user that high value has a higher than average net income, and I want to target those rather than someone with less household income. Okay, and of course, as I mentioned before, the lead business itself is crucial here. So to encourage the users not only to find their property, but also to send relocation leads and mortgage leads help you to add value to your business. And last but not least, the homeowner stage. And this is also a crucial stage where when someone is applying, usually the information the information flow is outside of the website, and other industries experience that as well. So it's crucial to know more about your user. And when someone is applying for a property and then maybe they just exchange phone numbers and everything else happens outside of the website, it's important to know when someone becomes a homeowner in order to be able to market these different services, because unless you're a homeowner, you're just not interested in this. So either right in the beginning, in the awareness phase, you identify someone as a homeowner and market to them individual. But if they're going through the whole life cycle and become a homeowner after they've searched for a property or a flat on your website, it's hard to identify sometimes as soon as this is happening, so that you can market to them. Because for these additional services and also just the information that someone is a homeowner, it's again important for third parties and advertising partners. And usually a cycle is 7 years. This is the average when someone is moving, so it's quite a long period of time where you need to keep your users of your website loyal. And also it happens that not everybody is following through the whole cycle and maybe just comes in for just the relocation or just the mortgage or just the search features. But the ideal world, and so that you have to spend less on your marketing, is that you keep them loyal across the different stages, and ideally from the awareness phase towards the homeowner stage, in order to be efficient as possible. Okay. And this is what it is for the sample life cycle, and this brings us directly to the summary. So we have 5 key takeaways that I want to hand to you. So first of all, as we mentioned, tracking and monitoring. So what Corbinian said, a data layer is very important to have it on your website and your app, or whatever devices or systems that you offer to your end users where you collect your data. It is crucial that you collect as much as possible of first-party data, because this is the richest data, and of course that you also monitor that the data quality is high, that the data is accurate. There are tools out there nowadays, such as EventStream, that you can say, okay, for example, you have an event specification that you can say, okay, with a lead, I need an email address, and I need the white paper name, and I need the page where it was downloaded from. So this is what defines a white paper download for me, for example. And of course, the data integration. You collect the data on your website. You have then the integrations with all the different vendors that you're having, and in between, you need this unified customer view in order to be able to orchestrate this across the whole organization and also across the different vendors.
Yes, and from my point of view, as a little recap, the interpretation of data is something that we cannot automate. And this is something that we have to do ourselves, meaning experts and managers. We have to be clear who is doing it. So we need an ownership of data for this as well. And this is absolutely crucial because this comes down to the last point, action and controlling. So even if we have the best analytical system and the best BI team in our company, we need somebody who takes action and really says, okay, this data really looks good. Let's do some A/B testing. This data really looks bad. We have to do something. But action and controlling is something that we cannot automate. We have to do it ourselves. And this is, for me, the key priority when it comes to drive sales, leads, and conversions. This is really something that we need experts on. So thanks a lot from my side. Heading over to Danny again.
Thanks also from my side. And I think we open up now for questions.
Perfect. Yes, guys, we do have some questions for the pair of you. So starting off then with a question about monetizing data. What percentage of quality leads do you think the average business can monetize if processed correctly?
Danny, do you want to take this?
So yes. So Charlotte, could you repeat once more the?
Yep. Charlie, what percentage of quality leads do you think the average business can monetize if processed correctly?
Oh, okay. Processed correctly, I think up to 100%.
Perfect. Well,
yeah. Let me add this from my perspective as a consultant, looking at different companies. So I think companies are doing fine if they can actually monetize, from my point of view, really average, not talking about any industry, about 40 to 50%. So because it is really hard to convert 100%. I did not see any company who can do this yet, but obviously I did not see all the companies. So just if you really ask for my opinion, I would say 40 to 50% is really good.
Yeah, I mean, there were more or less a joke what I say. I mean, up to 100% is of course possible. And what you're saying is, of course, in a real world, 40 to 50% is of course realistic. I mean, but I think I was more relying on the data accuracy piece. So if the data is not accurate, of course you won't be able to achieve this, and in the real world you will never achieve 100%. But data accuracy is important here, and if you have this right, you can be outstanding within your business and achieve more than 40 or 50%.
Yeah, and let's not forget about the normal conversion rates of companies, right? So most companies are super happy if they can convert an e-commerce shop 2 to 3% of users visiting the web shop. So what I can see, if you really do it right, you really can do an amazing job. And if you reach the 30 to 40%, what is possible in my eyes, it is amazing and outstanding.
Great. Okay, well that ties in with another one of our questions, which is what would you recommend the key piece to ensuring quality data?
In my opinion, I would say communication within a business or within an organization. As I mentioned before, everybody makes mistakes. Everybody should think about what they can do to increase data quality, but everybody can do their own contribution there, but it's all about communication, and it starts from the product managers who has the request, and the engineers who set it up, and the analysts who look through it maybe and are the first gate when it comes to quality assurance and say that everything is tracked correctly. But also let machines help you to see if the data is accurate and as you want it. And then also communicate with your marketing teams when it comes to outcome, and see if things are logic and help you with your business. But communication is for me key.
Yeah, I absolutely agree, Danny, because as far as my experience goes with my own company, working for WA Gore on a global level, so definitely I recommend weekly data checks. So this is what we established. So every Tuesday to Wednesday, we reserved half a day just looking at the data and checking the APIs, checking the reports. This sounds rather boring now, but I cannot agree more. It's really communication between different guys in different departments in BI, analytics, IT, as well as sales as retail. So this is absolutely key to understand how data quality is. It's not enough to have an alert system. This is nice, but somebody has to see the alert, somebody has to act on it again.
Brilliant. And are there any baseline metrics you can recommend for monitoring data quality? Maybe if we start with you, Corbinian?
Yeah, this is a good question because I'm doing as well a lot of attribution modeling lately, and obviously this is different from B2B, B2C. If we talk about an e-commerce shop, if we talk about some B2B service websites, but what I can say is definitely that if you have, for instance, first-party data, you definitely should look the amount of data that you're having. Obviously, this is something, so if you do not receive any data, for instance, that is a no-brainer now, but definitely you do have a problem. If the quality of data changes, it is also an alert signal I would definitely go for. If something really happens out of the line, so meaning if you know your seasonality in your business, and for instance, you do normally not get a lot of sales in August, right? And for any reason you're getting now a huge amount of sales in August. This is something that I would also look into. But as you can see, it is not really easy for me to really say, okay, there's a standard set of metrics that you can look in for data quality. But definitely coming back to it, it would be the amount of data. It would be, let's say, the number of leads and sales you're receiving via seasonality, obviously. And of course, the amount of traffic, impressions, clicks, and the relation to this is also something that I would definitely look into when it comes to first-party data.
Perfect. Okay, is there anything from you, Danny, to add to that?
Yeah, I mean, from my history as an analyst, I mean, I agree that there is no set of metrics for every business that you can rely on, but sometimes you have alerting systems that maybe compare the daily numbers or even the live numbers against a floating average from the past, maybe over the last week, so that you also know, or even if you have a seasonal business or also a business that varies, and this also applies for the real estate industry, that you have different amounts of traffic, first of all during the day, but also during the week, and also on Sundays more than on Mondays, for example, so that you have averages across comparable dates and times, so that you can see if these numbers make sense. And of course, something like specifications, event specifications, coming back to event stream with this, is something where you can set up what you want to see, and with especially with event stream, you would see if an event is not compliant with what you want to, which information you want to have, and as soon as this happens, you can go back to the to where the data is produced and see what the cause for this was. So there's no definite metrics that I would recommend, but wherever data is coming in, there should be something established that monitors and gives you at least a feeling if something is going wrong or not. But in the end, it will still be some manual work and thinking about and some some common sense about what is realistic and what not.
Great. Okay, then final question. Once you're confident in data quality and you have regular performance monitoring in place, where would you start with data integrations, and how would you decide on that point to start? Danny, maybe if we start with you on this one.
Yeah. So just that I understand the question correctly, it's about once the data is accurate, when it comes to integrating it, where I would recommend to start with?
Correct. Yeah.
Okay. So again, it depends a little bit on the business, but usually I would recommend to start with vendors that, I mean, yeah, kind of thinking a little bit about it, it's usually with all the industries or within all the businesses over the last years, I can't imagine that there is a business outside which does not have a huge technology stack already across the business. I think our CEO also said it's various, more than 50 sometimes. So there is a lot of vendors already there. So when you're maybe talking about email or retargeting or social or on-site personalization, there's usually a tool already there. And this comes back to my prioritization, use case prioritization slide, that it wouldn't make sense to choose any vendor that is not already there unless the vendor that you already have is really not variable. But when we speak about the existing vendors, I would usually start with those that reach the lion's share of your audience so that you can see something leveraged. And then with narrowing down and making more and more segments, more and more maybe also personas that you identify across your website and where you want to target them, where you want to engage with them, this then brings you to the individual vendors. So if it's cart abandonment, of course you can start with, if it's just cart abandonment without being registered, it would be just retargeting. But if it's a cart abandoner that is already registered and has an email address with you, so it would make it's more effective to send them an email and send them a personalized email, maybe also reflecting their status and their average order value or whatever information you already have about them. And this can be a much richer and a more customized communication way. So yeah, in the end, yes, depending on the data that you're having, I would start with something that reach a wide range of your audience. But if you have the data with different personas and segments, and depending what drives your business, I would then narrow it down to the individual actions, because I mean, I'm someone, I need an email if a company wants something from me, I don't react to any ads. But this is what can be found out, and then over time it gets more and more sophisticated.
Perfect. And Corbinian, do you have anything to add to that?
No, not for the moment.
Perfect. Well, we've only got a couple of minutes left, so I guess from our side, there's just time really to thank you all for attending. To thank our hosts, to Danny and Corbinian. Thank you for running us through that wonderful presentation. And just to recap, contact details for Danny and Corbinian are being displayed currently. The webinar will continue to remain on BrightTalk to be watched on demand and will be added to our website. Slides can be available on request, so please don't hesitate to get in touch if you'd like a copy of those slides. But as I say, thank you both for hosting, and thank you for all to attending.
It was a pleasure. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you very much.
Listening in.
Perfect, and we hope to see you all again soon.